Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
Welcome to the Fan Forum, the show where we learn more about Husker Nation one fan at a time by asking the same 4 questions. I'm your host, Mac, and joining me, the person to my right, is Redcast Honke. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, it feels weird to be on this side of the table on one
buddy.
of these.
The tables have turned. Yeah. The spotlight's on you for a change.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's an honor. Thank you.
Well, hey, this is my inaugural or first initial hosting job, so bear with me, Redcast Nation, but it's probably going to go just fine.
I'm sure it will. You got an easy guest.
Yeah, I really do. I feel like if anyone's going to talk about Husker football, I got the right guy. So just a little house cleaning stuff when we're talking about it. You know, we got a bunch of stuff to go over today. I think we might even, after these 4 questions are done, there's enough Husker information out there that I think we might just extend it.
I think this is 2 shows in one because, you know, the forum is the same 4 questions. The first 3 are all about me, the guest, my history. But question 4 is, how do you think the Huskers will do next year? That's a Matt's rule.
That's a launching pad, folks.
So I think it's just, we're going to just transition from forum into Matt's rule by the end of this.
We got to be who we are. Okay.
Well, before we are who we are, not that I'm trying to take the hosting away, but
that's okay. Cause
we do have a couple of, we have an upcoming show here. Actually, we do have a couple of them. I don't have the timing for one of them. But the next forum is next Thursday, August 10th, 8:30 p.m. Kendall Wickwire Sr., he's the host of the Wired Access podcast on Husker Sports, or Hurrdat Sports, and he's an ex-high school football coach. Also a buddy of mine, Bob Brackenoff. He's he knows Bob. So
friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show. So roundabout there. Next up is Alumni Hall, and you see their logo on top here, and it'll be on throughout the show.
Yep.
2 Lincoln locations, downtown 1120 P Street and South Point Pavilions behind Barnes & Noble.
Yep, Husker fans, it's time to go get your flags.
Oh, get it. This is the perfect time of the year to be going to Alumni Hall.
Think about how you're going to start representing game day.
This is a great time of the year also to go to pipeline-jerky.com, use Redcast to get 10% off.
Yep.
Dave at Huskies, who's started up a pipeline. I mean, my goodness, the great jerky, and it goes to a great cause, goes to the offensive line. Let's rebuild the pipeline.
And it's low carb. So if you're out there looking for some sort of non-carbohydrate snack, check out Pipeline Jerky. Help the team out, help yourself out, lose some weight, and support the team.
Support the Redcast while you're at it. You can use the QR code here, but smack and smooch. Our new Redcast store there. We're wearing hats and shirts and everything from them. Shane and Laura out there in Elwood. Quality apparel, custom-made orders. And last but not least, we talked about this a little bit last night with Tommy Frazier when he was on the Redcast.
Tommy Frazier.
But the battle in Boulder for anyone that's going to be out there in Colorado, Friday, September 8th, the night before the game. Well worth your time to go out to this thing. Adam Carricker's going to be out there. Obviously, Tommy is. And I like to think that we've butchered this a couple of times now when we tried to promote this. When you and I were on Matt's Rule a while back, I was like, I couldn't read what town it's in. It's in Estes Park, but I was like, is it it's somewhere in the mountains? No, it's Estes Park. And then last night, Gary Michaels, Clothers, is putting it on. They're the ones behind Big Red of the Rockies.
Oh, sure.
And if you want to learn more about this, go to Big Red of the Rockies website. But Rob was like, yeah, they're in downtown Lincoln. And right away, Tommy had to correct him and go, no, he's in South Lincoln. So we couldn't get anything right, apparently. But get it right. Go to
it's a live show, folks. Sometimes, it's not always buttoned up.
Yeah.
But our hearts are in the right spot. So, you want to just get right into it? Can I ask you the very first question? Matthew, why are you a Husker fan? Please.
If I had to start, I'll just throw a photo out there. And Grandpa and Grandma Honke. I mean, it started with them. My earliest memories, the 1984 Orange Bowl, the 2-point conversion, is running up and down their stairs. And I can remember kind of running into the bathroom in between Jeff Smith scoring the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. Okay. I was just like hiding in the bathroom. I was like, I can't watch. And to this day, the tears of not getting it. My mom would tell the story of how, I guess I was at school in first grade. I was in school afterwards and I'm in tears and crying and the teachers couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I was still upset about the Orange Bowl, and countless years have gone by where I could have been second, third, fourth, 10th grade. I was probably doing the same thing. So
there were some down moments too. Let's not forget, there were some heartbreaks back in those days too.
But these are three people very dear to me: Grandma Honke, Grandpa Honke, Grandma Honke, and then my cousin Steven. All three have passed, but and they're in this photo here. They're wearing their Husker stuff. Steven's got the hat on. Grandma had the shirt on. And there was a lot of love of the Huskers that came from them.
Your grandpa dresses just like my dad did. Pocket t-shirt, collar shirt, like he was going to SCOTUS or something. That was a great shirt. When I first met you, that was one of the first things. It was so apparent to me. This guy's a Husker fan through and through. And you were my touchstone for any kind of, everybody knows about running backs, quarterbacks, this and that. I'm like, who's going to be the starting line? Nobody knew the lineups like Honke did. Like nobody else put two deep charts together like Honke did. He'd write out the I formation and this would be that, and give me the three, and not just the depth chart, but like their eligibility. It was a junior, redshirt, sophomore, blah blah blah. You always had that put together. So no surprise to me that where your Husker roots come from. They're very strong, very deep. Probably not unlike a lot of Redcast Nation out there. Mm-hmm. That's a Nebraska football in a nutshell too. It's like it's almost inherited. You grow up in this state. It's part of your Saturdays in the fall experience. Is like, when we were kids, not every game was on TV, but every game was on the radio. In the garage, in the basement, in the kitchen. If dad was working on the car, it's in the background. My dad would watch like a Notre Dame game with the sound down, and the Husker game and with the radio up in the background. And as a kid, I didn't know that. And I'm like, this doesn't line up. I don't know what they're talking about. We didn't score a touchdown. There's, but I love that part about Saturdays. It was like, we didn't play the radio a lot in our house unless it was Johnny Cash, Statler Brothers or something like that. But if the radio was on, it was a Husker day,
That is so true. And about Grandma and Grandpa, even they were on separate floors. Grandma was upstairs, Grandpa was downstairs. Mm-hmm. Grandpa was tall enough to be able to hit the ceiling if he stood out of his chair and hit it if something went wrong. But Grandma would be listening if it wasn't on TV. I can remember always the radio being on upstairs. On the other side of the basement, I have a letter from Lyle Bremser to Grandma, response to Grandma, KFAB, header on it and everything. But and he talked about some fine players from Columbus, blah and Kush. But Grandma must have written KFAB about something. And but I can remember listening to radio upstairs, going there on a Saturday morning of a football game, and the World Herald. They would always have like a drawing, whatever the artist, they would draw the prediction of that week's game, and it would be Nebraska against Missouri. So they draw a tiger and they draw a Herbie Husker and give some prediction, have some kind of little funny saying in it. And I can always, and we'd cut them out. Grandma would cut them out. Right as you walked in the front door, just to the right was the poster. Yep. The Husker poster for that year. Yep. And I still remember like it was yesterday, the scoring explosion poster being up there. So I mean, when my memories of the first year of Husker football for me was 1983, it's walking into Grandpa's house and seeing on the right side Mike Rozier and Irving Fryer and Turner Gill breaking through the scoreboard.
Another one, if you're of a certain age, because newspapers aren't what they used to be. But man, the Saturday morning, because we never got the Journal-Star in Columbus. We always got the World Herald. But like you get that Saturday morning World Herald, and you'd open up there were so many articles about the team, and then you open up the page and it'd have those like the formations of like their standard icon of a player, and then the list of the players behind them. You'd open that up and look at the starting lineup. It was just such a spectacle. Because that was your only media back in those days. You had the news, but then you had the paper, and like getting up on a Saturday morning, opening up that paper and looking at the depth chart and looking at the other team's depth chart. It was just all part of the experience. It was all part of the immersion into Husker football and just the glory of it. And I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm right there with you. It's kind of a similar environment. It makes so much sense.
Well, so the other thing, I guess that would be part of question one then. Grandma and Grandpa, obviously, and like you said, that I've asked this question to so many different people, and it's this inherited thing. It's brought down from one generation to the next. So Grandpa and Grandma, that's two generations from me. Well, they handed it down to my dad, and so 2 weeks ago today, my dad's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I wanted to do and didn't get a chance to do exactly the way I wanted, but I wanted to do a fan forum with Dad. I want to do one with my mom, and my mom and I are going to do one. But my dad, literally the last conversation I had with him. I mean, I'm talking the last, maybe he had 2 paragraphs after this little audio get done. Maybe I said 2 more paragraphs to him after this, but this is kind of some of the final things.
That's awesome.
But this is something I talked with my dad on a Saturday. It would have been 3 Saturdays ago from this upcoming Saturday. I was able to get one little short fan forum in with him.
Awesome.
So it's about 4 minutes. I'm going to play it.
Yeah, give it a listen.
All right. Question 1, Dad. Why are you a Husker fan?
I was born in Nebraska, and I liked everything about it. And when we lived out of state, I missed it sorely.
You missed it when you were in Kansas.
Kansas, yes.
That's right. What were some of your favorite Husker memories?
Probably my dad bringing us to knothole sections and the early Husker ways of seeing it. Just knowing that that our stadium is like Ohio State's. I remember the KFAB always would have their promotions of Big Ten, and I always thought higher of Big Ten than I did Big 8, just because of they were the big schools. They had the big reps, and so I always thought highly of that. And so when I finally got to be at Ohio State for a week long class, I just really enjoyed that, thinking that kind of fulfilled my academic desires too, in addition to the sports scholarships that people get into with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they built Memorial Stadium.
In the image of it, yeah.
Yep, because they were built right about the same time as Ohio Stadium.
Yeah, they're the bowl, but we had the 2 sidelines.
Yep. Do you have any favorite Husker players that, in history, anyone that you really remember?
I'd say that I just remember them in different ways. Mm-hmm. I can't really pick favorites that way. It just doesn't the way it works for me.
I remember you talking a lot about Johnny Rogers and the amazing runs that he used to do.
Yeah, I guess if I had to have an exception, certainly Johnny.
And you were a SCOTUS graduate too, and that was Blaha and Kush time too.
Yeah, that's true. And I can even remember, not that I had any inkling of comparability, but I remember that, that in gym, we had competition running, and sometimes, and I ran against, one time PE when Bill was, no, that's Blaha, Kush, that trying to run against him, and it's just kind of an interesting memory to be able to look back to think that I basically a PE nobody had the opportunity to run against one of our better defensive backs.
Absolutely. Well, the last question, Dad, I always ask is, how do you think the Huskers will do next year? Matt Rule, do you have any good thoughts there?
Well, on the worst end, I don't think we can do any worse. So let's put it this way. If I compare it to Boston, I don't have very far to fall.
Love you, Pops.
Love you.
That's fantastic. I love that it tracks so well with how I know you and how I know your family. And I think probably a lot of Redcast Nation out there can relate to those stories with your old man and those Saturdays and everything you have with them. Back when we were growing up, man, the Huskers were formidable, and it became such part of the scene at the time. This is the part that I think Rule has done a good job of integrating is understanding that this is all, it's deeper than just the football. It's the connection. It's what you have with your dad. It's what you have with your grandpa. It's what we want to have with our kids, and just kind of play it forward. And it's a part of the state identity. We love that stuff. It kind of, I mean, our friendship was sort of formed on Husker football. It's obviously deeper than that now, but my gosh, man, what a touchstone.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And, some of that might have been hard to understand. Some of it there, he talked about Kansas. My parents moved to Kansas in the 70s, and that's where all three of us kids were born.
Sure.
So I was born in Topeka. I lived there for all of 7 months. He went to Ohio State in the 80s and for like 2 weeks. I mean, it wasn't a long time, but he was there for like a class. And I remember him he had this Ohio State shirt that he wore. Used to kind of bug me when I didn't love it, but he would wear this Ohio State shirt, and he just talked very glowingly about his 2 weeks at Ohio State. And so, you had that. And the thing is, like with my parents, they are very different types of fans. Like they would both watch the Redcast, but Dad wasn't going to get into the X's and O's and who's our third. He couldn't care about who our third string guy was. But he you see him putting the flag out there. I mean, he had his rituals. He loved it. My mom's the nut. I mean, she screams and says everything. And I probably get some of my emotions from her. And, some of my, when I go off on the text chain with the guys, that's Marty working through me. Yeah. But it was great to do that with him. I was really glad I had a chance to do that.
Yeah. 100%. Man.
And to hear that. And so
that's fantastic. I think that's a gem. 100% Jim, but what you said about your mom kind of resonates with me too, because my mom, I just remember her going, "Oh, come on, boys, tackle, tackle! I'll put that ball away." Like I remember when you remember how Steve Taylor used to run with the kind of the ball out here. She'd go, "Oh, no, put that ball!" And like my mom was, and this is I hear Rule's wife talk about his wife trying to bring the women in to Husker Nation. There couldn't be an easier job. The women of Nebraska are in on Husker football. My mom's 100. My wife is 100%. Your wife's 100%. Like it's all part of it, and the thing that I struggle with sometimes with my kids, I'm sure you feel the same way with Alex. It's like, it's been very difficult because like I still get mad at games when we lose, and my kids still come up to me and we're like, "What's the problem?" I'm like, "Well, we're losing, but we always lose." I'm like, "No, we don't."
Yeah.
We don't. We don't always lose. We used to be really good. It's problematic, and I don't like it. But like,
we want that to end.
I want that to end. I want the kids to come upstairs when me and Nicole are jumping up and down and high-fiving because we won a game, like that kind of stuff. Even when your dad talks about Ohio State, like I resonate with a team like Ohio State when you go there and you understand that. Though they root for a different team, the passion is very similar. The heartbeat is very similar. Like we want nothing but the best for these boys, and like and to cheer them on as they win. That's college football to me. Like all this realignment, NIL, the transfer portal, like that stuff's all kind of distractions. Like I can't wait till college football. All the dust settles and we kind of know where we are again, so we can kind of get back to like. It's not going to be normal like what we remember, but just kind of the new normal. Like we can't even get to a new normal.
Colorado leaves the Big 12 to go to the Pac-10, only to turn around and leave the Pac-12 to go back to the Big 12. Until you get some kind of normalcy. But I just think maybe this can kind of finish up the first question, at least, is that part of that, like you talked about the women of Husker Nation. I think of my parents and my parents having their friends, the Landholms, the O'Neills, the Wagners. I'm DMing with Tyler Kai here on the side about our friend Doug Wagner. His dad has been a season ticket holder since like 1962 or 64. Oh, wow. He's missed 4 games.
Wow.
4 games.
That's pretty impressive.
And the 4 games, 2 of them were, I think, if I remember right, 2 of them were the daughters got married.
Inconsiderate by the daughters, but okay.
There was a death in the family was a third, and the fourth was he went to his World War II boats reunion.
Okay.
Like how amazing,
like humongous circumstances to take him away from a game.
And to be able to remember the 4 games he didn't go to, and he is stuck to the very end of every single game he goes to. Yeah. That's Husker Nation. That's the greatness of it. I love everything about it.
I love that. Well, that ties in perfectly to the very next question. what is your favorite Husker memory? And I'll just say, it doesn't have to involve me. It probably will. But what's your favorite Husker memory? There's a bunch to choose from. I'm curious.
You know, what's cool is part of this is I think it's important to have young memories, you know, things of your youth. It would be easy to say, hey, we talked to Tom Osborne on this show.
Oh,
last night we had Tommy Frazier on. You know, those are great memories. Don't get me wrong, but nothing beats the memories as a kid growing up and being able to be around friends and family and do things. Tommy talked last night about his favorite season was the 93 season, not 94, not 95. That season meant a lot to him, that the team was getting over the hump. They didn't quite win it, but they were getting over it. And honestly, one of my top moments ever is that 94 Orange Bowl. The whole night I was at Grandma and Grandpa Honke's house for it, and it was just me over there. I could have been over with buddies and all this stuff. I went to Grandma and Grandpa's because that was 10 years to the day, basically, of the Orange Bowl against Miami.
Okay.
The 2-point conversion. Wow. And I can remember running up and down the same steps, except this time I'm a sophomore. I'm wearing number 44, the jersey for Calvin Jones.
Yep.
And the night was awesome to begin with. It was great to be with Grandma and Grandpa. It was great to watch the game. It was great to do all that. But then afterwards, where did we end up at, Matt? At
midnight mass, because we were good Catholic boys raised right.
It was a Saturday night, and you know, I mean, midnight mass. People were a lot of times you're not wearing your Sunday best, anyways. But I came in.
You were in sandals.
I came in my Husker sandals, but I came
so
in.
Was Jesus.
And you could probably tell the story as well as anything. As me, I came in. I was not going to take that jersey off. I was so proud of how the team played. That I was like, I didn't feel like we lost. I honestly didn't. I was just so proud because we were 17.5-point underdogs and not even supposed to be on the same field with Charlie Ward and all those guys. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's a pretty good one.
That's a good one, Kathy, and a nice tie into the show. But to just to speak to this man over here and what a Husker fan he was throughout the entire midnight mass. For those who didn't go to SCOTUS back in the 90s, that was kind of a thing that was set up for the high school kids to go to church late at night, knowing that they were probably hanging out with their friends on a Saturday night. But I remember specifically because it was after that game, people actually waiting for you to get there and kind of seeing how you were dealing with it, because it was so well known throughout SCOTUS. And what were we, sophomores?
Sophomores.
Like even seniors, like thinking like, well, what's Honke think about this? You know, like I just remember thinking, and you came in and you were a little crestfallen, but not defeated. You were like, we're going to be so good next year. I remember you just saying, I remember it because I was sort of like, man, we were so close, almost got there. Oh, once again, can't get over the hump. After talking to you, I remember bringing up, you had the Calvin Jones jersey on, but we talked about Lawrence Phillips and like how good and like, I just remember after talking to you,
I didn't get that.
I felt so much better about going into the next year, probably because of Lawrence Phillips, but I was invigorated, you know, it was just so fantastic. So man, these just go way back. Well, it digs up a lot of memories.
I mean, part of this favorite memory, that night's not over. We got done with midnight mass, and I don't know how you and I don't know what we did, but we ended up at Hardee's because that's what you do in Columbus at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And that's where you and I sat down. And it's honestly one of the first times that I ever really had a peer where I was talking to somebody. I would do some of the stuff on my own, but it was you and me. We started drawing out the two deep for next year. Like, oh my gosh, you know, this, you're starting to think about who's coming back.
Yeah.
Hey, wow, Uyghur's coming back. Okay, we're losing Lundberg. Yeah. But you know, I think that you know, maybe they can move Zaska over to left tackle, and like we start talking things through.
Yeah.
And okay, LP, and obviously the game that he had playing only in the fourth quarter against Florida State.
Frazier winning you talked about it last night with him on the show, and him winning the MVP, but still losing the game. That was crazy. But we got this guy coming back, and the team seems different. Like it was it's hard to put in perspective what that night was like and how that changed, like the team, how Osborne and the team had changed the perspective of Husker Nation based off of one really good game against a really good team that, you know, you go back and watch that game. There's plenty of things that probably were called poorly that we could have won that game. I'm not saying anything controversial, but man, I did that night. That night is so crystallized in my memory, and I don't have the greatest memory, but that one there is just, it's so perfectly like the moment that I felt like we were friends before that, we were good friends before that, but like when that moment converged, it was like, this is my roll dog. This is my ride or die. Like I know I can come to him, and I never doubted your Husker knowledge, and I never doubted your passion for the team. So like right away, you were like not negative about it, just ready to move on to the next thing. Let's get after it. And I love that about you. It resonated with me, and I don't want to say it's been the basis for our friendship, but I can't say it isn't.
Well,
So
I mean, you're my right hand man. I know I'm yours in that too. Is that I've known you since '89 now. This is our 5th decade that we've been friends, and I have so many great friends, guys on the Redcast, and Rob I know is doing the back end here, and Rob's a great friend, and Rob could have done this with me too,
sure.
but I couldn't think of anyone other than you, Mac, to do this kind of show, and really that night was important.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big night for Nebraska. But then that next offseason, we get to 94, and that's where you and I that we go through an offseason of getting the magazines and all this.
Yeah.
And and I think some of this shapes me now. Like I think of the game, that Orange Bowl night in 94. If that was Twitter, would more focus have been on attacking Byron Bennett and attacking the loss versus how well we played and what this could mean for the future. And I think that's what the intention of the Redcast is. And when we say that we are Husker realism with a positive spin, we can be realistic. We can be frustrated. I was frustrated with the loss that night, but did you not see things that you can build off of? I'm seeing
something was different that night that you could recognize.
Is there something different right now? Are we just saying the same thing over and over again, or are there different things going on? In 94, we took that offseason and went to your first game ever at Memorial Stadium, went to Pacific. And then we watched the Colorado game together. And that was number 2 versus number 3. Brooks game, amazing game. And I mean, it just all that to me blends in. And then my wife wrote in that I did propose her at the 50-yard line. That should probably be somewhere on my list of favorite fan memories.
It just came on so late, Well, there were just so many memories before that, Kathy.
And honey, for what it's worth, on a previous fan forum when I had Lance Schwartz on, and he was at Husker Vision, he's the one he's the only person that saw us propose. So we've already discussed it, Kathy. That's why I didn't forget it. I just
no. Yeah, that's been fully recognized.
Yeah.
So moving on. I'm curious about this a little bit. Who are your all-time favorite Huskers?
This is a question that I ask it every time, and people they'll give me lists and lists and lists of them. I don't know that I really have a favorite Husker. I really don't. I don't think in those terms of like this guy or that guy, and which is exactly, by the way, what my dad said. And then I had to go, well, you kind of talked a lot about Johnny Rodgers, right? I tend to be, if I'm not in awe of talking to Tommy Frazier last night. I'm not in awe. Tom Osborne was amazing, but like guys that were our age, or if I talk to a kid that's on the team now, or if I talk to a guy that had Adam Carricker on, I like Adam Carricker a lot, but he played here in 2004, and I'm older than him. I'm not going to be like, I'm not in awe of that.
Right.
What I'm in awe of were the guys from the 80s growing up. And they could be guys. Rod Smith came to our midget football banquet. And there's a photo, again, it's across the basement here. There's a photo of him, and he's got a little toothpick in his mouth, and he's signing one of my papers. And I mean, to me, he's a god at that moment, right? Mark Benning, an offensive lineman from like 83 and 84, he came to one of them. I know he came to one of them, and I don't think I was old enough to play yet, but I must have gone to the midget football banquet. Okay. And I remember talking to him, and I've looked him up since. He was like 6'7", 270. So which is big anyways, but like gigantic in those days. And so, I mean, those are names that I remember a lot of. And then one that does resonate with me, it was when Tyler Kai was giving us a tour, and you were there and Rob was there, and we were doing the tour last spring, and we get done. And it's the day before the spring game. So there's alumni that are in the building, the facilities, and Reggie Cooper. And Cooper's a great player, by the way. I mean, it's not like, people are like, who are you talking about? No, people knew who Reggie Cooper was, but like, he was more than just like a good player to me. Like he was He was the Ronnie Lott of Nebraska football
Okay.
in 1989, 1990. And again, those are those formidable years. I'm in midget football, and I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and again, we've talked to all these guys. We've talked to all these, the big time Husker players, and I'm talking to Reggie Cooper, and he couldn't have been nicer to me, and I almost couldn't get words out. I was just like,
yeah.
And I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I was like, oh, I was starstruck.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember looking up to that guy, and here I am chatting with him. I mean, I just thought it was one of the craziest things there. So
you always just loved the team. Like that was your like, what's the unit look like? Like that was, you never singled a guy out. You were never like, I mean, you had a Calvin Jones jersey, but that's just because that's what they were making.
Yeah, that's what they sold.
They sold 44s and
Were you with me when we went to an Amigos in like 1994, and we were in Lincoln for like probably volleyball, like state volleyball, and Brett Popplewell was there. Were you with me that night?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I go up to him and go, "Oh my God, are you Brett Popplewell?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah."
And everybody out there's going, "Huh?" That was kind of a honky story, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like Honke knew who Brett Popplewell was, and like I remember laughing about that several times over. So you have always been a team guy. You've always been a coach guy. You've always been a Nebraska guy, and not just the program, but the state. Like you've always embraced just the state, and the football program has always seemed to be kind of just like the culmination of all that. Like that's the pinnacle. Like this is where all my love for the state leads to, is just how much I love this program and in this university and everything like that. Hell, man, you work for the university. Your dreams are coming true right now. So
I love being there. Well, I'm going to take over here now.
Okay. All right.
And even though the question's coming to me, we're going to transition here. And folks, if you've been watching, I know I've got family watching too. Please continue. But the fan forum part, asking about me now, is moving over, and we're going to question 4. How do you think the Huskers are going to do this year? And I'm actually going to even switch the brand up here on the top right. We are going to go to Matt's Rule.
It's bonus material time.
This is bonus material time. Matt's Rule. And this switches now. This is the forward-looking thing. So we're moving on from the past and everything to what's going to go on in 2023. We've done many shows over the course of the offseason, but we are into spring or fall camp now.
Yep.
We're 3 days into fall camp.
Yep.
We've had a lot of things go on. We've had a tight ends coach who was here for all 7-8 months, no longer here. We had Miles Farmer today officially went into the transfer portal. So some things are changing roster wise and everything. But I guess right now, where are you at, Matt? 3 days into fall camp.
3 days into fall camp. It's what you mentioned. Those distractions with Wager and Farmer leaving, to me, this kind of speaks to how good I feel like the offseason is going. That barely made a ripple for me in a lot of ways. Rule just seems to have such kind of his own built-in safety nets that with Wager leaving, we had this other guy come up right away, and he's already familiar with all the players, and we haven't really missed a beat on that. Miles Farmer, yes, he's in the transfer portal, but if you were going to pick one of our deepest spots in the defense, you would say the back end, right? The secondary is probably our deepest spot. Now I know Buford's hurt too, and I'm not unconcerned with that, but it's just like one of those things is like you get some bad news. If you weigh it with the whole, the big picture of everything, it's like, how bad is the news? I don't know, but man, I just haven't hated anything I've heard. I haven't hated anything I've heard. I love that they're splitting the practices up. I love that they're trying to get the young guys a bunch of reps. I love that they're rotating. It sounds like, day 1, Harburg was the backup quarterback. Day 2, it's Purdy. And I'm not saying the true backup. I'm just saying, when they split the practices, one was with this group and the other was that group, and then they flip it the next day. What I see these coaches doing is doing a true evaluation of the team that they have, and they're doing it in such a way that's actually putting extra stress on them, right? They're doing 2 full practices with a split up team, which has never been done around here before. I mean, I know Riley had 2 different units going,
not since at least Solich or Osborne,
right? Yeah, but I mean, it's so important right now because it's all been talking season. It's all been workout season. It hasn't been playing season. So like he has to evaluate this team truly to get to know who's going to play, who's there for the right reasons, who's going to buy in fully to his new philosophies. And what better way to do that than to get as many reps as you can to each group? And now does that require more for the coaching staff? Yes. But that's Rule's way. It's like, if you're going to, I have a feeling, if you're gonna be a coach on the Rule staff, you're probably already planning on putting in full work weeks. And I'm not talking 40 hours. I'm talking, I don't even know. I'd love to hear actually how many hours those guys put in.
Well, I think what it is, it's the reps specifically. It's a continuation of an off season of walking the walk.
Mm-hmm.
So right away we heard big things back in December when he was hired. Hey, we're going to do this. I remember the first time they talked with Satterfield, he talked about a fullback. It was like, oh my God, the fullback.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're also going to follow through with it.
Right.
Well, there you are, the first play of the spring game. It's a fullback, trap, and that wasn't just for the heck of it. They kept doing it over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've gone out and brought in walk-on transfers from Notre Dame and bringing guys in, beefing up that position for year one of it.
Right.
And so we're not just talking the talk there. We're going to have a fullback. We're going to get under center. We're going to have contact. We're going to take those green jerseys off the quarterbacks. Well, there you are in the spring game, watching quarterbacks taking hits.
Yep.
So they're going through and actually walking what they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's a big deal. The reps, for the longest time, when Frost was here, we heard all about that there's going to be stations.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would go to those practices, those first two spring sessions for Frost. We went to them, and there were all these stations, but yet by the end of it, you're hearing that guys weren't getting reps. The guys, there are a lot of guys that are like standing around saying, wait a second.
I know.
Okay. Now it's early, in the Matt Rule era. So, we need to keep up on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to keep up. A month from now, the same questions about how the station's going. That needs to be asked a month from now. It needs to be asked 2 months from now. We need to see development throughout the course of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't just a practice one
right.
question. But at least up to this point, there's so few things that I could be upset about with Coach Rule. And then but that doesn't mean that it's been perfect.
No.
Look, Bob Wager, that's an embarrassing moment for just the program in general. Nobody wants to hire somebody in here and have them be gone, before the season even starts. But you know what? How Coach Rule speaks to it, the transparency that he's not hiding behind anything, and he's also setting standards. And he's simply saying, "This is look. If I don't care if I brought you in, I don't care if you're someone else's, someone else recruited you or someone else hired you. None of that matters. Moving forward, these are the standards, and no matter how you got into this program, you have to do this to stay in this program. And if you don't, guess what?
There's the door.
It is not a right to be at the University of Nebraska. It's not a right to be a coach here. It's not a right to be a player.
Nope. And I've heard people on Twitter. I've read some things on Twitter about people saying, that, the wager thing, that's 100% on Rule. That's a whiff or whatever. And this and that. They're right. It is. It's 100%. Like, the head coach ultimately is responsible for his team that he puts out there.
Yep.
But to act like that means any controversy that comes up is somehow a reflection of a poor culture or this and that. Like, that's not. It's how you handle these things.
Yes,
it's how you would deal with these things. Do you hide it? Do you get out in front of it? Do you hold true to what you said you were going to be? And to me, he's done that. And not only did he do that, he already kind of had a built-in safety net to what he was going to do next. So off seasons are always you're always peppered a little bit with some controversy. Geez, look at Northwestern. I mean, that's not the off season they thought they were going to have. If we lose a tight end coach for a DD, okay, I'm not happy about it. But I mean, would you be any happier if he got the DUI and we didn't discipline him? I mean, we've had other coaches. Context always matters, but on the face of it, no.
I mean, we had a well-known assistant coach about 4 or 5 years ago, or under the Riley era, who had multiple ones before he was hired.
Yeah.
Right.
I know.
And, I think if you ever want to watch a dissertation on, I've mentioned this before, but a dissertation on what it takes to build a program, watch Coach Osborne as athletic director Osborne firing Bill Callahan, that press conference that morning where he announces that he fired him. It's a 30-minute press conference. And it's not even about Callahan at that point. Right. It's more about what's important with a football program. Right. How do you build a program? How do you build a championship culture? All those things that people don't want to talk about, but are really important. And you mentioned it with the head coach. Is it Coach Rule's responsibility that that somebody showed up overweight? Is it coach rules responsibility that a player isn't doing something right? Is it his responsibility that a coach got a DUI? Well, ultimately, I guess everything funnels up to the head coach. So as far as it pertains to the football program, yes, it's his responsibility. But all that I care about is that once it gets up to him, that he handles it right.
Yeah.
I don't have any question. I don't blame him that somebody was overweight.
Right.
There's personal responsibility that somebody, same thing with me, by the way. Hey, I could lose a few pounds, right? I'm not going to blame anyone except for me on that. And if I show up overweight and my job requires me to be at a certain weight, then what I would expect the job I'm going to, I would expect them to say, sorry, man, you need to come here, and you're up here. You got to go back until you get here. And that's what he did. Hey, I show up at a job and I got a DUI. Then if the place is like, yeah, these are the rules, then these are the rules. Even in hardships so far, like I said, it hasn't been perfect under rule.
No.
There's been issues that have come up. But even when those things have come up, he's handled them the way I would expect him to handle it.
Right.
So I don't have any issue right now. There's nothing systemic. I don't see 20 guys coming in overweight. I'm not seeing, a third of our staff getting DUIs. I mean, there's a lot of context to it, but in how he's running the program and how we know that there's one guy in charge. I mean, the head coach is in charge and he's setting standards that are high and you got to meet them.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be one thing if maybe the discussion before something happened hadn't been well presented, but I seriously doubt that let's just use Fleeks. I'm not trying to call him out, but I bet he knew what weight he needed to be at. I bet it was relayed to him. I bet the message was clear. You need to be at this weight. You need to come in at this. Individually, you were responsible for your own actions, but the head coach is going to be responsible for the consequences of those actions, and you're going to be held to that. And if that's well communicated, then you really can't have much of an issue with it. I'm like, here's the rules. Here's our standard. Here's our culture. You do this, and this, we'll have no problems. You step outside of this, we're going to be talking about something differently.
And he's doing it.
If you're consistent, if the messaging is good, and if the in what the consequences of everything that's happened so far is tracks completely with what rule says he wants. And to me, he talks about integrity. That's integrity. That's saying and doing and being what you purport to do. It's unrealistic to think on a staff in a team as big as Nebraska has. Yes, it'd be fantastic if everybody towed the line perfectly. That's if anybody works anywhere, you've got people working with you that don't pull their weight. It's just human nature in a lot of cases. Yeah. But if your goal is to achieve greatness, if your goal is to be a place that you haven't been in a long time, you can't have that.
Yeah.
You got to have people going in the same direction, top down from the bottom up.
Andrew says, I agree. He made the right decision. Of course, we know Andrew is Andy.
Oh, Andy List, what's up, buddy?
Mr. Andy there. And I agree with what you're saying here. I mean, this is we haven't even played a game yet under rule.
Right.
He is still, I'm going to use the C word, culture, and he's still setting the culture, and he's still setting the expectations. Right. And early on, you sure as heck can't let this stuff go by, because do you think this is the last time that we're going to have somebody show up late at a meeting or something? Kids, an organization the size of this, there's going to be 150, 175 people that, right now, I think there's like 170 people that are staying at Selig dorms when you count all the players and the coaches and the staff and everything. Anytime you put 170 of anyone together, you're going to have, there's going to be a couple of errors that come out of it, right? And what you got to do is you got to set those standards high, and you got to keep people to them. Yep. And so I appreciate that Coach Rule's doing that. I think he's a leader by example, which is another thing that I like about his management style. Yep. He's going to be there sooner than anyone. Yep. He talked about that a week ago at the Big Ten Media Days, that he wanted to be the first coach of all the coaches, all the Big Ten coaches. He wanted to be the first coach there that morning. And it was more just to be there. But that also, does that not rub off on Ethan Piper or Reimer, on Sims, the players that are there? Is that, coach isn't just asking us to show up early for a practice or show up early for a film session. I mean, literally, he's the one showing up early for what he's supposed to be doing.
Well, and it speaks to his full philosophy of you compete in everything you do. Yeah. Like, that's what it shows the players. Like, we're going to compete in everything you do. Like, everything? Yeah, even getting to the Big Ten, media day first. Like that, we're competing. Like, maybe the other team doesn't even know we're competing. It doesn't matter. like, I know we're competing. I want to get there early. We're going to put our best foot forward. It gives him time to go down Radio Row and do all these interviews. And
I want to give Dave credit on this show. A year ago, we poo-pooed a little bit Frost that last the last media day that he went to when he didn't have an opening statement. And I was like, and at that point, I just wanted the season to start. I was like, stop making controversy just for me. And I kind of got on David at that time, but I was like, stop making controversy just to make it. But the reality is that number one, he was right. I mean, I can't defend it's part of your responsibility as of the coach is to tell the story of the program and to be a good, voice and face of it. And not doing that was not fulfilling that part of the role. So that part was right too. But the other thing is, because it was year 5, because he's not setting the culture anymore, the culture's set by that point, I let that go lax. Like in year 1, that's really important. You got to do things in year 1. No, you know what we need? We need consistency. What I want to see out of Coach Rule, I like everything I've seen up to this point. He hasn't coached a game yet. I like everything I've seen, but he needs to be the same guy then in 5 years. He needs to still have these same standards. You know, it's not something where it's like, okay, go out and win a national championship. By all means, go out and win a national championship, Coach Rule. But then if you come back the next year, it's like, show up when you want.
Right. Yeah.
You can come in 15 minutes late. You can. I mean, that's the thing that the Nick Sabans and Tom Osborns and all that of the world. Those are the guys that are the second you win a national title. It's like, I don't even want to see the rings. I don't even want to watch because that's in the past.
Yep. He does seem very much wired that way. Like it regardless of what success we do or don't have this year, I feel like we'll only direct what he does next year. It won't hamper it. Like if we end up being weak on the line, defensive line, offensive line, that'll just kind of direct how he focuses the offseason and this and that. But I think I would love to stop talking. I know I said this before, but like by year 2, like I'd like to stop talking about culture because it's so already ingrained. Like I don't remember talking about culture with Osborne. It was just like, this is how Nebraska does it. It was the Nebraska. It
was the Nebraska way. Yeah. And I mean, this is now we're taking deep cuts here, but it's like there was a Nebraska way of doing things. And when Solich was fired, it wasn't just getting rid of Solich. It was we're replacing everything. I'm talking back end people we're replacing, the people that weren't in front of the cameras. We're replacing everything, and we were almost like a startup program. And I thought the same thing at Michigan when Lloyd Card leaves, and he was a Michigan man, and they replace him with Rodriguez and everything. It's not just the X's and O's. They just started over from scratch, and it is so difficult, especially for programs like a Michigan or like a Nebraska, where you are so established. There was a Nebraska way of doing things. And for the last 20 years, we've been trying to figure out what's the right formula to get back to that. Well, what it is just hire Frost, and then it will be the 90s all over again. Or is it just any kind of semblance? Mike Riley's first staff didn't have a single guy with any Nebraska affiliation at all. His second year, he brought in Perella. And I was just,
and of course, Ron Brown's always on the side.
Yeah, Ron Brown's always there. Thank you, Ron, for always being there. But it was that idea that at times we've just been begging for anything that's some kind of connection. Well, what's so interesting is right now, and I don't want to underplay this because short of Trev, and Trev's pretty important here, but short of Trev, we don't have any connection really, other than Ron Brown is on the staff. But there's really no connection with this current staff. And yet watching them and watching Coach Rule operate, it feels like the Nebraska way to me. I don't know. I mean, it's the way they talk to the players. It's the physical contact practices. All those things they're talking about, fullbacks and Ed Foley going around to every single school in this entire state. And I know other staffs tried some of that too, but damn it, Foley's done it, times 10. And all those things combined to these guys feel as Nebraska to me as anybody else, whether they're from the state or not.
Well, and that speaks to Trev, right? Like, Trev went out to find guys who already think like Nebraska likes to think. I feel like that was a big part of his hiring process. And so I think it's in some ways kind of easy for Rule to kind of fall in line with the Nebraska way. Like he says, it's on the building day by day. Like that's what he thinks. And, it's easy to do the comparison with former coaches. And I'm not trying to call somebody out, but like one of the things with Bo is he was on Solich's staff, so he thought he was more of the Nebraska way, but he kind of somewhat resisted the Nebraska way in some regards. The black shirts were always an issue, how we were going to do it, how we weren't going to do it. You know, his just kind of contentious thing with the media that was just a little bit unnecessary in my mind. I'm like, we're going to have a ton of interest, and you're going to have to deal with that. And so that always those two always kind of collided. And I know there's other things going on with Bo, the AD, and everything like that, which made it hard. I'm not trying to sit here and diss Bo. I don't think Bo had the athletic director set up that like what Rule has from day one.
Certainly not at the end.
I mean, not at the end. I know Osborne was on board with it, but Bo was. So anyway, the way that Rule lines up with what Trev already thought was going to work at Nebraska, and the way he's integrated Nebraska history, the way he talks about Osborne all the time, the way he always brings up. I talked to Coach Osborne about how to split this up and how Osborne said reps are important.
Yeah, he name drops like Rob.
Well, nobody name drops like Rob, but it's true. And the fact that Osborne seems so actively involved, even with Frost, I'm like, you figured Frost talked to Osborne all the time, and I'm sure he did, but you didn't necessarily hear him talking about him the way Rule does. Rule's looking to Osborne for almost guidance on. He's like, I heard him talking about the Damon. I don't know if y'all have watched this yet, but watch every part of that Damon Benning interview with Coach Rule. It's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, Heard at Sports,
100%.
Damon, they did a great job.
Fantastic. But you know, when he was talking about the black shirts, he's like, well, you know, the starting defense wore black shirts. And he just kind of left it at that. And it's like ever since Solich, it's always been like, you know, you got to earn it. You got to play like this. You got to do this and that. You got to be in the community and blah, blah, blah. It's all this like perception. I'm like, well, it used to just be the starting defense.
Yeah. Well, it used to be, I mean, the origin is going down to Lawler's in downtown and just trying to find a jersey color that was opposite from what the offense was wearing. And they couldn't get rid of black shirts. Right. That's the origin. And ever since that, you know, we're trying to create some mythical thing. Guess what? Tackle, play hard in football, you know, play hard in practice, you know, live up to a high standard, do those things. I mean, that's what's going to get you back to it.
It's always the fans that are kind of like, what's the black shirts mean? You know, play like a black shirt. Fans love to take stuff and run with it. And I love Husker Nation for all that stuff. I really do.
We're fans. We do it too.
But I wouldn't mind if it just got back to being, well, if you're the starting this position in defense, you wear a black shirt. Like, that makes
cool. How about, you know, I like it when it doesn't get stupid. Like, hey, we only have 6 black shirts because only 6 earned it.
Or I turned in my black shirt because I wasn't playing well. Well, then get off the starting lineup then.
Yeah.
If you're not playing good enough, then anyway, we don't have to keep going down that road.
What I like, and we said this earlier, and I kind of want to go back to this, is that we said not everything's been perfect so far. We've talked about it. He had to make a change on the coaching staff already, for cripe's sakes. And we've had some play, you know, a guy that we thought was going to be a starter just went into the portal day. It hasn't been perfect.
Nope.
It hasn't been perfect. And yet, what I like about how Coach Rule has led things is that he's made things look easy so far when they're not. They're not easy.
No.
But how would some of those previous coaches we've talked about, how would they have handled some of the same situations? Or when they get asked that question about, you know, what are you going to do with the black shirts or whatever? There are times that we've created contention in the past.
Yeah.
Different coaches, different situations, different media members, all that. We've created contention that didn't need to be there. Stop creating your own in-house issues. Guess what? I mean, Coach Rule is about as easygoing on the things that aren't important. He's not going to get in a fight with somebody about something that's not important. But when it gets to be important, when there's an issue that's important, he's not going to waver on it either. I mean, there are things that you're doing it this way. That it's not the rule way. You're going to do it. It's going to be the right way. This is how we're going to do this in this program. And he's setting that so early. And look, again, I don't want to. The season to me isn't going to fall because one guy, any guy. I don't care who the one player is, you know, comes and goes. There's a lot of players on this team, and next man up. That's a mentality we got to have. I mean, I know somebody would listen to that and go, "Oh my God, what if something happened to Jeff Sims right now?" Then you know what? You got to put up the next quarterback. I hate to say it that way. It's the mentality you've got to have. Well, geez, we only have 3 scholarship quarterbacks. 1994 had 2 scholarship quarterbacks and Matt Turman. I don't know. And then if Matt Turman goes down, you have to have Cluster Johnson and Tony Veland playing safety and guys that you have to create contingency plans. Tommy Frazier last night told us about returning punts. I asked him about that.
I remember that.
And he goes, I did it just because I used to do it in high school. And if this guy and this guy and this guy get hurt, I might be the 4th guy returning punts. And you know what? That's what Coach Rule has to do right now. People talked about, why'd you have this gigantic staff when you built this huge staff? Well, you got a guy like Martin sitting there as an analyst, and he just seamlessly now just went into being a tight ends coach. Yep. He's been a position coach at other P5s. And so guess what? You create your own contingency plans.
Yes.
And you've got to do that right now at quarterback. We've got to be more than just 3 scholarship quarterbacks. We have the 2 walk-ons behind that, but we might need to do something else. We might have to create some wildcat positions for guys. Be creative. Mm-hmm. It's the thing that I banged my head time and time again last year watching our offense, the Whipple offense, where it's like, well, shit, that didn't work once, and it didn't work the next 20 times either. What were you, and you're showing things sometimes, and it's like, be creative, be innovative, do something different. If something's not working, figure out a way to make it work. And that's, Rule has shown. I don't know what he has to prove to me, but he has shown that he's willing to maneuver around these situations. He seems to have an answer for when something pops up. It's the thing that I've heard so many people say, it's the adult in the room. And when somebody acts like they're not an adult, we've had some guys act like they're not adults. Coach Rule acts like an adult and handles it.
Here's what I've liked so far and encouraged me going forward through the season. We talked about being tough and then hitting the quarterbacks and the quarterback. Well, then we saw it. We saw it in the spring game. They were hitting the quarterbacks. They were getting run. And you talk about the standard, and then guy steps out of line and he's kind of removed from the team. You talk about getting in-state recruits and making that a priority, and then you see that. So when Rule talks about going in this season and he's like, I can't say that we're going to be the hardest working team. I can't say that we're going to be the smartest team. I can't say that, but I can say we're going to be tough. Like now, as much as, and I know there's plenty of fans out there like, well, I got to see it to believe it. I'm with you.
Yep.
I'm with you. But it encourages me that for the most part, it's hard for me to even think of an example. And if you got one, put it in the comments of something Rule said that we were going to do that, and that the time has passed now that we didn't do. Like the quarterback's going to get hit in practice. They did. We're gonna be tough on the lines. We looks like we are. We're gonna change our bodies. Going to add flexibility. We're gonna be more mobile. Mm-hmm. We've done that. We're gonna put big emphasis on the state and recruiting. Well, we did that. Like all that stuff that he said we're gonna do, we've done, and like it allows me to relax a little bit, open myself up a little bit more to the possibility that we might have a decent year. Because I do think if we're a very tough team, physically, mentally, then we're going to be a very tough team to beat on the field, period. I believe that because I believe all these close games over these last few years have proven that we have talent. I just think that with a little more targeted focus and that toughness that he talks about and demands, you see his coaching staff coming off the practice field. They're drenched in. They're drenched. Now, I know it's been like 98% humidity for all you Redcasters that aren't in the state of Nebraska. It's been humid. But these guys,
it's always humid here, and I don't always see coaches.
Yeah, these guys are working. So. Oh, you're talking about like he talks about player health and recovery. What's he do? Grass fields. They're practicing on grass fields. Like that's not a small move. That's a big move. And credit to Trev making that stuff happen. It just the synchronicity and the alignment of these two men towards building this program correctly. As much as I want to resist it because I'm in my own feels about that and how much I just don't want to be excited and then let down. Boy, I tell you what, it's getting harder and harder to keep those guards up.
Well, one of my favorite things, and I've heard this from some fans I've talked to that have been critical of Rule, which by the way is totally fair. Be critical.
I don't mind.
Be critical, right? But
be fair in your criticism.
Well, that's I think just in general, I'd say be fair to a lot of people, right? But at the same time that I've heard someone be critical, I've also heard that same person or the same people reference, well, gosh, he's good friends. Coach Rule's good friends with that Penn State AD. In fact, he even got that, he referenced and gave a good reference for that AD who's at Penn State now. Right. What happens when Franklin leaves? What are you worried about? Yeah. What are you worried about? Are you worried about Matt Rule doing such a damn good job at Nebraska that we're going to lose him? Is that what we're worried about, folks?
That'd be awesome.
After 20 years of coaching staff after coaching staff leave not in good ways, after being the number 2 team in the country in dead money, over the course of those years, millions paid out to coaches to not coach here because they were like, is our biggest concern that this guy might leave and go back to his alma mater and do a Dave Van Horn on us? Because guess what? Dave Van Horn took us to 2 College World Series and set up the program for success.
100%.
Whether the program did, that's a side note.
Mhm.
What I want to see right now, I'm not thinking this isn't 4D chess. I'm not 20 years in the future. I hope Matt Rule is our coach 20 years from now because he's had so much success and we've won national titles and all that. I hope.
Yep.
I hope. But right now, what I want him to be is the best coach Nebraska's had this season, next year, and you go from there.
Show us the way. And prove that it can still be done in Nebraska, which you and I both believe it can still be done here. I know national media is like, well, Nebraska, can they compete? Shut up. That's so dumb. It's such laziness. Like to think that now, especially now with the transfer portal and NIL, that look, Prop 48 is still going to kill us. Shut up. That's dumb. We've already proven we can get talent in here. What we haven't done very well is develop that talent.
Yeah.
Well, what if we do? What if we develop that talent then? Look, I know Penn State's been marginally more successful, but they haven't put any trophies in their trophy case. Maybe a bowl game here and there that we have in these last few years.
Yeah, we're 4-1 against them in the Big Ten.
Like why are they a spot that he go to other than being his alma mater? He's talked. Okay, getting back to what he said and what he does, he wants his family to be raised in a place in over a period of time. Well, he's got some young kids here, and he's in Lincoln right now. He doesn't want to keep moving his team, so he wants to set down roots and he wants to put it together. And man, I'm telling you, if you get it rolling in Nebraska, I guess I need to see it. I need to see what getting it rolling in Nebraska looks like in the 2020s. But I have a feeling that getting it rolling in Nebraska in the 2020s is going to look as good as it gets anywhere. I don't think necessarily Alabama is going to be. Yes, I get the fertile recruiting ground, but that's horseshit anymore. Well, the way you can recruit nowadays with NIL. And
if Alabama was such fertile recruiting ground, why are they coming to Ainsworth to try to get a tight end?
Holla.
So I mean, my point here is let's just get good.
Yep.
Let's just get good, and I think that there's my expectations for the program as a whole, and I think this is very important. Expectations for the program can be different from expectations of a team. Okay. The expectations I have of this program is that whether there's a 4 or 12 team playoff, Nebraska should be sniffing it. That's what Nebraska should be as a program. Nebraska should be a top 10 team year in and year out. Nebraska should be 9 wins plus. Nebraska should be in November every single year contending to win the division, to win the conference every single year. Basically everything that we haven't seen since we've started this podcast. But that's my expectations. That's my expectations of the program.
Right.
And they still I maintain that. There's a reason they're building a $165 million facility on top of the amazing facilities that we've already had anyways. There's a reason why we can do these things that we're going to show up in Colorado and have half the stadium again when Deion's, making his home opener.
Yep.
There's a reason for that, is that Nebraska fans aren't just going to let this thing die off.
Nope.
Okay. And so that's my expectations as a program. My expectations for this team, I'm going to maintain this. I've done it all off season. It's the race to 6 to me.
Yep.
And that race to 6 isn't a ceiling. I can't stand it when someone sits there and says, oh, the ceiling on this team is 8-4. Whatever.
Yeah.
I guess you would have said, what was the ceiling on TCU last year? Because they won 11-1. What was the floor last year on Northwestern? Because they went 1-11. And of course, as we all know, their one win was against us, right?
Yep.
Stop it with the floors and the ceilings. Yep. We had a whole thing on that over the offseason. But the race to 6 to me is important. Mm-hmm. We need to get back to a bowl game. And if it takes us 6 weeks to get to the bowl, or 6 weeks to get to that win point, we're 6-0. We just beat Michigan. We just beat Illinois on the road the week after that. We're 6-0. Awesome. Yeah. We can sit here and we can evaluate. We'll have a Redcast that week. We'll talk about how important it is to not look past the next opponent, and let's revise our expectations. Let's win 8, 9, 10, 11 games. Awesome.
Yeah.
Or if we're 5-6 and Iowa's coming to town, it's Black Friday, we need to get to a bowl game.
Yep.
Beat Iowa for a second straight season and beat them at home. Defend home, and let's get those extra bowl practices and let's get to a bowl game. And anywhere in between. That's my expectation of this team.
Okay.
That's not the same expectation as the program.
Nope.
But for this year and year one, my expectation is that. So win or lose against Minnesota. It helps me with my mindset too, because I'll be as pissed as anyone if we lose to Minnesota. Of course I will. I'm mad every time we lose.
Yep.
But if we lose to Minnesota, I'm going to reevaluate in my head, and I'm going to sit there and go, Honke, stop. Mm-hmm. It's the race to 6. The season's not over because we lost a game. It's the race to 6. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to keep evaluating, keep doing that in my head over and over. Win or lose. And I think that's important in this first season. That my expectation in this first season is that we set ourselves up for long-term success.
I think,
going to a bowl does that to me.
I truly think too. That's most of Husker football fans. I think most people, though disappointed with how the program's gone, look at this season and look at this coach. If they're being a fair evaluator, it's hard to project more than 8 wins any way you slice. It's hard to be. You're being ultra optimistic if you say over 8 wins, just out of pocket, being really bullish on it. But you're also being kind of naive if you think there's no way to get even more wins. But I think, who said it? Was it? Oh, Trev Albert said it about in the Big Ten media days. He's like, most Husker fans can recognize when you're playing good football, and the wins you might not always reflect, but if you're playing good football and we lost that game, not because of poor clock management, not because of poor special teams play, not because of snaps going over somebody's head, just because just normal like football bullshit. If we could remove some of that and lose a game, okay, I see the progress. I see where we're going with that. That's where I want to be year one. Okay, this is my year one caveat. Now year 2, I don't want any of that shit. We better have it lined up. We better done a good job recruiting. Because year 1 will never be held to the same standard as year 2. Year 2 has got to be a higher standard. If we're moving in the right direction, we're not the program that I don't want this shit. I want it to be like I want a steady climb. I think Rule would say the same thing. The whole coaching staff. You think year 1 should be the worst we ever are.
Yeah,
with this staff, that's 100%. So whatever the floor is now, and I'm not saying what the floor is. I'm saying after the end of the year, we'll know that should be about the floor, unless we had some sort of fluky win against Michigan or something like that, where they, snap the ball over their head on a punt. We were turning for a touchdown, winning that game. I'm not calling that a prediction. I'm just saying that'd be cool.
I want to show this, and this is interesting. And we did our preseason. Was it? Okay,
go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, we did our preseason predictions on Twitter. We had over almost 50,000 votes, and it was game by game, went through each game, and you can vote on it and who's going to win, just head up. And what I love about Husker Nation, this happens every single year, and it happened again this season. If you ask most fans, and we do, most people say, hey, we're going to go 6-6, 7-5, 8-4, maybe being optimistic. And I think most people think that way. But when you actually throw the teams in front of you and you have to vote one team versus another, Nebraska versus Minnesota, Nebraska versus Colorado, same thing happened. This is almost 50,000 votes. Nebraska going 10-2. And so the slide here, if you're watching this, the first half of the season here, where do we got this? Oh, my graphic is wrong on this. But anyways, first half of the season, 5-1. And it's us beating Minnesota 75 to 25%, us beating Colorado 92-7 or 92 to 8%, us beating Northern Illinois 96 to 3 point something, us beating La Tech 96 to 3. And then here's Michigan. Now Michigan's going to beat us like 85 to 15%. And Nebraska, we're going to turn around. And this was the closest game. Nebraska's going to beat Illinois 57 to 43%. Now, think about this game for a second. It's Nebraska at Illinois. It's following the Michigan game. So big game on a Saturday. And we got to turn around and play Illinois in Champaign on Friday night. So just, kind of let all those challenges get up there. But we're going to win them, 57 to 43. The second half of the season here, of course, we're going to beat Northwestern 97 to 3%. We're going to beat Purdue 80 to 20%. We're going to beat Michigan State on the road 61 to 39%. Maryland at Nebraska 77 to 23%. Now we're going to lose to Wisconsin, and we're going to lose to them. And of course, I can't see it because I got a thing in front of it. It was about like 65 to 35, something like that. And then Iowa at Nebraska, we're going to beat them 82 to 18.
Sounds right.
And so what I love about it, it's Husker Nation, even when you've been beat down year after year after year. And I think it's the blue blood mentality. We still look at the name. We still look at it and go, we're not, are you kidding me? We're going to lose to Purdue.
Yeah.
Never mind what we've done to Purdue
100%.
Against Purdue the last, 6-7 years.
Yep.
We're going to lose to, are you kidding me? We're going to lose to Illinois. Never mind what Illinois has done to us the last couple of years. Right.
Yeah.
And granted, I think you can look at those things differently too. What have those teams done to us the last couple of years? Have they beat us? Have they beat us down? Or in a lot of ways, have we beat ourselves in those games?
Yeah.
And I mean, whether it's onside kicks in the second half or the Illinois game that we went to in Champaign 2 years ago, I mean, the cluster dumb effery of football, that stuff, that's what's got to end.
It's a hard job to evaluate a football team when they haven't played very good football fundamentally. And like it's hard to evaluate your talent. It's hard to evaluate your floor and ceiling when you just haven't seen your best foot. Like I think like Illinois is a good example of a team that really flipped it when they started playing good ball, and it took a good coach to do that. Bielema really flipped that team quick. Is it unreasonable to think Nebraska could do the same damn thing? I mean, come on. I'm like, I know without even looking, we've out-recruited Illinois these last several years in a row. So
there's a lot of guys. This team, I'm looking at the lineup right there, and immediately the first name that jumped off was Thomas Fedoni, just looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a whole slew of guys on this team that it's untapped potential.
Yep.
We haven't seen it yet.
Right. A lot of it's on the line too.
We've talked about that how many countless years now.
Yeah.
If it's recruiting stars and all that, I mean, the line has had it, but we just haven't seen the play on the field match that. When I look at a guy like Thomas Fedoni, am I drinking Kool-Aid, or am I being completely unrealistic if I sit there and say, well, geez, stay healthy, and this guy, I think this guy can be all conference. Well, I don't even know if he's going to be the starter.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality right now. But I like the components. I think we have some really good players on this team, and it's going to be about how do they develop, how do they come together.
Yeah.
And I think what you can do in practice and where you can make a difference in today's football more than you could have 20 years ago. We always talk about all the advantages Nebraska had 25 and 30 years ago. We could be on TV when other teams weren't, blah, blah, blah. One advantage that you can have today is you can be more physical than the opponent. You can choose to be more physical. Mark Banker, when we got our behinds kicked in 2016 to Iowa, got done and said, man, they must have bloodbaths for practices. And I'm sitting there going, well, what are we doing in practice?
Yeah.
That was a choice that we made. That was a choice that we made. I promise you, there are other teams right now all across the country, not just Big Ten or whatever, but there are teams out there that are making a choice not to be as physical as Coach Rule's being physical with this team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a place that we can make an advantage.
Yeah.
And if Minnesota has beaten us the last 4 or 5 years, just physically overpowering us, blah, 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 and they think that we're just going to be the same, we're going to take the same physical approach to them. If that's what they think, then I think that I like our chances.
I do too.
Because I think that we're going to be better prepared,
mm-hmm.
better suited to take on a physical Minnesota team.
Mm-hmm.
And look at Minnesota's a running team. Minnesota's
mm-hmm.
getting under center. Minnesota's gigantic linemen. Minnesota will get an unbalanced sets. I know what Minnesota does.
Yep.
But what I like about that being a game one for us is it's an opportunity for us right away to see where we are physically.
Well, and let's see how they do with the physical team. Let's see how they handle us playing a physical brand of football, and see how well they adapt to that.
Yeah. I'll be very upfront. I'll be very disappointed if we get pushed around against Minnesota. And that's not a knock on Minnesota. I understand what Minnesota wants to do. I understand how physical that team can be. I respect Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this from a level of not respecting them. I would be disappointed if we are physically not ready, or if we get pushed around in that game.
I greatly dislike PJ Fleck. I when I see him talk, it irritates me. His whole shtick. It's not my brand of what I want my head coach to look like. But I will not deny his results.
Yeah,
he's done a great job in Minnesota. My nephew Ryan, we argue about it all the time. He's a big PJ Fleck guy. He came and spoke at a coaching conference that he did. And PJ Fleck does a lot of good things. He does a lot of good things. He's just not my type of guy that I want. But we've out-recruited them too. We've out-recruited basically the whole West, and haven't developed worth a damn. Like I don't know, and neither does anybody else what it looks like if we're developing players to a high level. And I kind of want to transition this a little bit into we haven't seen a lot of off-season videos from this team, this staff, or anything like that. No speeches, no rah-rah, no weight room, kind of how much we're lifting bullshit. But we have seen a few videos now, these because they allowed a little media access this first week. And saw some guys, dude, I know this gets said every year. When Frost got here, we got really big, but this year it looks, man, Arik Gilbert. Have you seen videos of him?
Yeah.
He looks insane. He looks insane. Like this we're talking like a 5-star talent tight end. Like I don't know if it was Sean Callahan. Somebody said through since they started ranking tight ends in the modern era, the highest ranked tight end ever in Rivals history is Arik Gilbert. He's on our team. And you guess who's either backing or starting before him is one of the other highest ranked tight ends of all time. There's Jeff Sims is a talent. Jeff Sims is a 6'4", 215 stallion with a rocket arm. He's going to be quarterback.
We were in the top 10 in 2016 when Dave and I flew out to Columbus, Ohio. We had just lost the week before in overtime at Wisconsin. We were a top 10 team going out to Ohio State. We got beat 62-3. And the Sean Callahans, I remember Callahan saying this, and I remember other people saying this, was that you could tell before the game even started, just being on the field at field level, that Ohio State team walks up to our team, and you just knew we were going to get beat. Like we couldn't physically compete, which is crazy because we were 7-1 and we were in the top 10, and it had just taken Wisconsin down to the wire. But apparently, so how important is it that we look good off the bus? Well, I think there's some level of importance with that. I do. So, at the end of the day, you got to
have guys.
Yeah, you got to have guys.
You got to have.
You have to have guys. I think if you get down to the basics of week one and to go to Minnesota, that Minnesota game, when I think of week one and what it takes to win in week one, we said this 2 years ago before we went to the Illinois game. Go back and watch or listen to our shows. I guess we weren't on YouTube at the time, but if you listen to our shows, we talked about you just have to do the basic things right. The team that plays the best special team, the team that doesn't kill itself with penalties and doesn't do the things with turnovers. If you play good basic football, you're going to win your first game more times than not. I think Coach Whipple last year said how important points were. Points were good, he said. And if we have to appreciate getting a field goal. Now, I have 100 issues with Whipple, but that at least was something that was smart, I think, that he came up with. But I'd also say I would go on the defensive side. We were talking defensively and against what Wisconsin or what Minnesota's going to want to do. Minnesota's going to be physical and all that. What I would say is don't overthink this first game. Right. If you're Coach White, if you're Coach Rule, not that they need my advice here, but I go back to the Missouri game in year one of Pelini, and it was 2008. And we came out with crazy defenses, and we were going to blitz from this side and this side. Yeah. And it was very early in the tenure. They're trying to set up their culture and their defensive scheme and all those things. And we just got blown out by Missouri doing just some stupid things that were just at that moment in time, just be good. And guess what? If you tackle well in week one, you're going to be okay. If you don't get penalized in week one, you're going to be okay. Yeah. Defensively, can you fill a gap? Can you make it hard for these guys that don't give them huge holes to run through? That Minnesota's not going to be. We're not playing Minnesota in week 10 either. They're not going to be a fine oil machine. 100% true. So just play good, disciplined football.
Minnesota's
do that in week one.
Minnesota's struggled some of their early games in their since PJ's been there. And
a lot of teams struggle in their early games.
Whipple also said, or I think it was Whipple that said, more often you lose your first game one than
That's
you win.
That's exactly right.
It's like because of mistakes and mental errors and this and that. It's more about not losing it than it is winning it.
Well, I go back to that roster you're talking about, Mac. And I'm looking at these names. Play good, disciplined football, and I look at these names, and I know what these guys were as recruits, and I know what these guys were as transfers, and I see some 5-star guys, and I see 4-star guys, and I see good players in there. Play good, disciplined football. Yep. Don't catch punts at the 1-yard line. Do the basic things well. Right. Tackle well, which starts in practice by tackling, which we learned.
Make your field goals if you get down there.
Make your field goals. We saw Tristan Alvano kicking. We saw some video of him, but we also saw that Bleak Rowe was making his field goals as well. Play good special teams, and guess what? It doesn't have to be harder than that. We break things down, and I love Husker fans. I love Twitter and all that. We make it so. We get down to the finest of detail. Don't penalize yourself. Right. Don't turn the ball over. When you get into the red zone, score points.
Yep.
I mean, these are fairly.
You just want to put your best foot forward. You just want to give yourself the best opportunity to win.
That's what I want to see in week one.
And that's typically just limiting mistakes, especially week 1. It's just limiting mistakes and executing as well as you can, as often as you can. And if you're physical, if you're the more physical team, I feel like that just lends itself to if a team's not ready to put their best foot forward and you get dealt with a really physical team, that's when balls pop out. That's when turnovers happen. That's when a pick 6 can happen. That's when, like Minnesota, yes, they've had great success these last few years, probably, since, the early, I don't know what, 40s when they were really good, 50s maybe. They're playing their best ball they've played in the last, since PJ Fleck's been there. But they're still a newer team. They don't have Mo, and they got a new quarterback. They're breaking in some new guys too. It's not a given that they're going to come out and execute at the highest level right away. Let's exploit that.
Well, I'll just make it as simple as this. 2 years ago, we went down to that Illinois game in Champaign. That was game 1 of the Bielema era. And you can say whatever you want about Bielema. You can like him or don't like him. Doesn't really matter.
Who made more mistakes after them?
That's it. Yeah. I'm going to ask the question a different way. It's not, instead of beating us up and saying how terrible we were, because we were. Yep. We were, and we beat it up for 2 years.
Yeah, we were terrible early.
Let me rephrase the question. What did Illinois do really well that game?
They didn't kill themselves.
I mean,
they didn't kill themselves.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Nobody, for all the things that, oh God, how many yards is this guy gonna catch per pass? Oh my God, this one guy is out. This guy might be hurt. You can go through all these depth chart things and get to the fine. What did Illinois really do well that game? Really? Other than literally not blow it.
Not blow it. They just waited. They basically waited for us to hand them the game, and we did on a platter.
And it's the combination of, boy, you can say that's bad coaching on our part. You can also say, you can give a lot of credit there to Bielema that, he was ready to go right away.
What you can't give credit to is their fan base. Their fan base had nothing to do with that win. Not one damn thing. And it just also points out to the fact that if you've got a good coach who's got a plan and understands the conference and knows what to do to put a good football team together, which you can't deny Bielema. You really can't deny him. He's done it now at Wisconsin, and he's already flipped Illinois to a program that they haven't been for a long time. And they had NFL coaches there.
Sure.
Bielema's come in and done damn good work. So I'm not discounting Illinois out of pocket or anything like that. But it also, you can look at them and go, well, if they can do it with a good coach, and I think you and I and most of Husker Nation would agree that based off his resume, take the NFL out of it, Rule's a good coach. Rule's a really good coach who's not just done it. He's never been given the keys to an ultra program.
He's done it. And that's the issue when Frost came here. For the people that had an issue when Frost came here. I'm not trying to talk now. I'm not talking in reverse. If somebody said, well, I had an issue with Frost in 2018. I didn't, by the way. Let me be very clear. I'm not talking about myself here. But for that fan that said, I had an issue in 2018 with Frost, and by the way, that person looks smarter than me, right? But that person, their issue would have been, well, this guy, he's green. He's only done it for 2 years. Yep. I have a whole, here's my list of things why I don't think Frost is the guy that was qualified for it. You look like a genius now.
Yep.
I don't think that you could take that same list, apply it to Rule, because Rule has done this at a college level, 2 different locations, shown really good success, flipping 2 programs to double-digit victory programs, taking them over in really bad spots. And this is, we've heard this a million times. He's not taking over a program nearly as bad of a spot here as the previous ones.
And with the Miles Farmer's news withstanding, most of his message has been that this team is really hungry to compete and win. They're really tired of losing. Like there's been not as much buy-in issue as maybe there had been in years past. And that is very satisfying to hear. And I think we saw that with the Iowa team. And I think Mickey Joseph gets a lot of credit for that, keeping this team, and Bill Bush too. Like there's a want to with this core group of guys, even with the transfers coming in, there's a want to, like a desire to work as hard as we can to get as good as we can be. And man, you can't ask more from these young guys than that. Hell, they're moving in the Selleck dorms, and that sounds kind of cool. But dude, we're average sized. We fit in twin beds, but think if you're Teddy Prohaska trying to fit in a twin bed. You're literally dangling your legs off of a wooden post trying to get some sleep, and that's just one guy.
And
we got a bunch of giants.
This is what pros try to do, right?
You know, and yeah, but pros get to bring in their own beds. And they bring in a lot of nice stuff and this and that. These guys have already kind of committed to the grind.
Maybe there's NIL packages for these guys to get better beds. You know,
I don't think Rule would let them. I think Rule wants them to get down and dirty and like they can't even leave campus. Dude.
I love it. They've set up guys to be. You know, Tommy Frazier talked last night about how the difference between him and Brooke just from a social standpoint. You know, I came from, you know, Bradenton, Florida, and he comes from Goodland, Kansas.
Sure.
And the difference is, you know, so we weren't going to be best buds. We respected each other, but we weren't going to be best buds because we were from such a different spot. And I've seen some of the matchups that they've had in Selleck dorms of this guy and this guy. And it's like, whoa, I wasn't. And it's usually an offense and a defensive player, but it's just all across the board. It's an offensive lineman with a defensive back and so on. Tony says, didn't some coach last year say something about needing to just wait for Nebraska to make mistakes and beat themselves?
That's 100%.
I do recall that.
Yep.
So,
which was like makes you sick to your stomach to think that that's something you could count on Nebraska doing. And yet we all know that's exactly what would happen. We all watch those games on pins and needles. Like no lead going into the fourth quarter was very like you weren't comforted by it. You know, back in the day, you would just watch games, even if we were down. You're like, well, they're going to fumble. We're going to land on something. We're going to pick something off. We'll break a long run. Like, that's what you thought. Somehow we're going to figure out a way to win this game because that's what we kind of always did.
And that
last year gradually went away.
And last year it flipped to the point where we would have second half leads, double-digit leads like Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Minnesota last year. And instead of the mentality being that we're going to, run away with this and win it, it was how are you going to blow it?
Right.
That's the stuff that has to end. Coach Rule has harped on that so many times. That's what I want to see.
Yep.
Well, Mac, we're going to parting shots here.
Okay.
And this has been exactly, even timeline, this is exactly the show I was hoping it would be. It's an hour and a half when this is all done. The first half hour was all about me.
Yeah.
It's the forum, and I'm the guest on the forum, and I appreciate that. The 3 questions.
You did really good.
Thank you. Why am I a Husker fan? What was my favorite Husker fan memory? Who are my all-time favorite Huskers? That's the first 30 minutes of this, and I'm so thankful for all the people that were watching along. I had friends and family I know that were watching along with that. Thank you, Matt, for being the host of that.
My pleasure.
It really was a lot of fun. And then at the 30-minute point, we transitioned to a match rule, and we just did a full hour.
Yeah.
We did. By the way, I'm a big notes guy. 0 notes. I don't have any notes for the match rule, and we just went for an hour because that's what we do. That's back in 1994, sitting at Hardee's. That's what it was. It was just you and I sitting back and doing
it. There's a lot to like. I guess was that your parting shot?
That's my parting shot.
All right,
you do it.
Yeah. Well, hey, there's a lot to like about what you're seeing. With the camp now opening up. I know there's a little trepidation with the Miles Farmer and everything like that. That's also part of it. But my main thing that I've seen that I like is the players are moving around good. The coaches are coming off saying positive things. I love the coaches' general message that this team really wants to be good. And if you got a team that really wants to be good and they are facilitated by a coaching staff that we hope knows what it takes to be really good, that gives me a lot of hope going forward. And to me, the Minnesota game's a coin flip. But what I don't think we will see is a Nebraska that comes out stumbling out of the block, making a bunch of mistakes, and just shooting themselves in the foot. Now it's game 1, it's year 1. Some of that stuff could happen. That's not necessarily going to ruin the rest of the season for me. If some of that shit happens, some of that shit will happen. We might have a fumble. We might have a stupid penalty, but it's like,
well, we will.
How do we, like, how do you respond to it? Like, is it a continual problem? Like those,
does that one problem lead to another problem?
Yeah. Does it shift the whole mentality of the team? Or are we all of a sudden kicking sand or whatever?
Not getting a third down conversion isn't a reason to shank a punt on the next play, and it's about, and we make fun of Iowa all the time for things, but it's one of the reasons I give Iowa credit. They think of all the countless bumbles they've had on offense, and yet there's a reason they keep winning 8, 9, 10 games a season. It's because, they have that, but then the defense finds a way to score a defensive touchdown, or the punter figures out a way to kick the ball out of, at the 2-yard line. And it's not that I want to be Iowa. I'm not saying that. But what I want to be is a team that doesn't beat itself.
Yep.
And when it does make mistakes, because every team makes mistakes,
Mhm.
Alabama and Georgia, they make mistakes, but don't let that mistake multiply into 2 and 3 and 4.
I just want
That's the approach Coach Rule is going to do. And I love it.
Yep.
I love where we're at right now. The race to 6 is big for me.
We want to be the team that puts the pressure on the other team to make their mistakes, as opposed to the other way around. Like I feel like that's the direction we're heading. I cannot wait to see it. I'm so excited. I'm so geeked out about how we're looking. There's plenty of roster stuff we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
Like just how good Xavier Betts you're hearing doing. Prohaska looks amazing. The defensive line comes in looking svelte and cut. I love the messaging at the podium. Like when NJ Sherman talks, he just seems all business to me. Like the messaging coming from the program is exactly in line with what I want it to be. It's not a bunch of show me. It's a bunch of just work and like putting the process 1% better every day. So I'm bought in. I'm 100% bought in. Not blinders on, but I'm bought into like what we're doing, and I'm fully supportive of the staff, this program, this team, the athletic director, where we're going with things. Does that make it Rule 8? I don't care. Like, listen. There's plenty of places you can go on the internet. You can go on and find all the negative things that we could talk about too. I don't want to talk about them. There's plenty of negative stuff we've talked about over the years. I want to focus on the positive, and I want the positive to be the narrative. So I guess that's sort of my parting shot is like, you are where you are with Husker football, but just to be negative to kind of protect yourself. If it's fun for you, fine. I'm not gonna play that. I want to be excited about the football season. It's so short. The off season's so long.
Well, and I like the conversations that you and I have. I guess I'm biased that way. I like what we talk about. But thank you, Redcasters, for following along. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for your comments along the way. And we'll have another show here, a Redcast. We're going to have Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews on here at some point next week. I don't have all the details finalized. We can break down. We can get into position groups. And we can go player by player and show first and second teams. We will. And there's plenty of shows doing that right now. The talk we had tonight is just the kind of talk that I just want to have right now. Yeah. It is bigger picture, and it's just in general. It's what's important as a program. What do we want this program to be? What do we want Matt Rule to be? I don't want him to be perfect. Coach Osborne wasn't perfect. No. Nebraska football wasn't perfect. When we talked to Tommy Frazier, he told us a bunch of issues and things that they had. It wasn't perfect, but you get through those things and you build bonds up as a team. Maybe that's some of what's going on in Selleck right now. You build those bonds and you figure out that when something goes wrong, you don't double down and make a second wrong, a third wrong.
Right.
How do you
don't
figure
let
it
out? Don't
let it beat you over and over and over.
Exactly.
If you do that enough times, I said this so many countless times on this show, and it sounds so hollow because we started this show right before Riley's last year. But if you do the right things and you do them long enough, good things will follow.
It's almost remarkable to think that it couldn't work out, but you're right. Like I feel like when I hear what he's doing, 95% of it, I think that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. It's like, how many things can you do right in a row and still lose games? I don't think that many. I don't think that you can keep doing all the right things and keep losing. But I guess we'll see. But the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, football is within a month. We are in the month of football now.
4 weeks from now, Vegas, Jer, we will be in Minnesota. We're going to play some ball. We will be in Minnesota for that week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The other guys, producer Skip, Rob, and Dave will be playing golf at the TPC with
fantastic
with Vegas Jer, which is awesome. You and I will be drinking somewhere near the Minnesota campus and talking with Gopher and Husker fans. Hopefully
some co-eds.
And,
JK, I'm married. I love it.
And it's great. We're 4 weeks away from this. Let's get the football started. But Mac, I think that's a good way to end it.
I did too.
Until next time, that's another Go Big Redcast.
A Herd at Sports Network production.